Hello, we are doing something a little different today. I am joined by actor, singer, songwriter, and recording artist Dru Serkes, whose music you've definitely heard if you've seen any of the tutorials on my channel. Today we are talking about music, just hanging out at Dru's house. So let's talk a little bit about how we know each other. We don't make as much music as we used to.
Yeah, I mean, now we mostly just go to concerts together and drink espresso. But the way we met, actually, I'd been on tour for a few years and I moved back to New York and I had a bunch of music written and I just looked up studios in my area. I'm pretty sure I got on Google and said recording studios near me. And one thing that stuck out about your page specifically was that you had demos of stuff you've worked on. Surprisingly, a lot of studios, it was just pictures of the studio and like lists of the equipment and maybe an about us page for the engineer working there. You actually had what every artist wants to know, which is confirmation that my music was gonna sound good if you put your hands on it.
And some of that was just like music that I had written myself. Like when I was just opening the studio, it was like I needed examples of material. I was like, well, here's the kind of thing, like genres I want to work in.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's because like the genres you do best should be the ones you want to work in. That leads to repeat business, people leave happy. And so I would just make my own demos of like, minute-long clips of fake artists that I had these examples to show people when they popped on the website.
It's effective though, because like I was able to click through and say, okay, like she sounds good, he sounds good. Oh, this is, if my music could sound like this band right here, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah.
And I remember hitting you up. We had a quick 20-minute consultation.
Yeah, you came to the studio. We listened to some of your stuff, some of my stuff.
Yeah, it was great. The first session, we picked, I had 5 songs written. I remember I picked a song that was like, this is pretty low stakes. I think it'd be kind of hard to screw up, but it was also a song that like I really wanted to get done. And it sounded great. And I remember like very shortly on, if it wasn't that first session, maybe the second session where we started just like very much vibing, if you will. I was very controlling with that album because I'd learned to become that way from experiences in my past working with different producers who some folks you just need to have a lot of control and be very specific with if you don't want it to get away from you. And by the end of that process, I think I'd learned to trust, like we built up that trust, that rapport that not every producer and artist always get the opportunity to have, but I think it's so important to find.
Now that album, you had just come back from being on tour. Did you write those songs on tour or were those the songs you had before that?
I wrote most of it on tour. Yeah, it was kind of, traveling for a couple of years. I had a guitar with me and, sometimes I would just play cover songs. So coming off tour, I think I had like 3 of those songs. And by the time I reached out to you, I knew I was going to have 5, but I think I had like almost 4 done at the time.
Where were you writing this? Like on the bus with an acoustic guitar?
No, no. That would not be cool.
Yeah.
For anyone who thinks it's cool to bring a guitar to where other people are and just bless them with your wonderful talents, I promise you that no one thinks you're that interesting, that they want to hear you when they're not expecting to. No, I would have hotel rooms or Airbnbs. When you're like a working actor and like a show, you can have a lot of free time, even though you don't have really any flexibility.
Right.
One of my goals when I came back to the city was, record an album. It had been a few years since I had done one. Yeah. And once we, I think, established that relationship, where like not only did I trust you, but like we kind of had a chemistry as far as creating together. After I did that 5-track EP with you, I remember I started saying, okay, my goal now is to do a song a month.
Yeah.
And I would just book time with you for the next month, and I would say to myself, well, I'm paying for time, I better write a song.
Yeah.
So it forced me to be creative, write a song, and at the beginning I would come in with something really fleshed out with a full arrangement, and after 3 or 4 of these singles, sometimes I was coming in with just a guitar or like a piano part and I'd sing it for you and then we just have a conversation for about 5 minutes about what you're thinking, what we're hearing, what I'd play a reference track for you maybe.
How did that dynamic change? Because you've worked with different producers and you've had different experiences, and I worked with different artists, but same thing with different experiences as well, where sometimes my role as producer, I always look at that term as kind of creative and collaborative, but sometimes people are really just looking for a recording engineer, someone to capture their ideas, mix the music, and that's what goes out. Some people are looking for collaboration even on the songwriter level. It varies a lot as to what people are expecting when they hire a producer. And I think with you and me, it started one way and morphed into something else.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about our love connection. No, I'd had various experiences with different producers before. I'd worked with friends. I'd worked with professionals who I'd met on the internet, just the way we met.
Yeah.
I'd met with references. I've had some very interesting experiences. I've had some very good ones as well. But, you know, you have one experience that can be a little jarring or scarring and you know, challenging very early on. My band in college had a very challenging experience, you know, recording a 12-track album once. And I remember coming out of that saying, if I bring my music to someone again, I have to be so specific about what I want and be so in control of it. And that's not just like, I know the tones I want and I can execute the parts, you know, as far as recording them goes, but it's also just being able to tell this engineer, here's what I want this to sound like, you know, here's how I want it to EQ, like as specific as I can be, so it's as hard for them to screw up as possible. Because you spend the time writing music, it's personal.
Like in some ways, it would be easier or faster for you to learn the recording side of it than to like narrate that to somebody. You know what I mean?
You
at
would
that point,
think
they're
that.
just pushing the buttons.
You would think at that point they're pushing the buttons, but they're pushing them so fast, you know, and so special. And
That's
it's like,
true,
I didn't have a year or a semester of my life to go and learn Pro Tools or
Right.
Logic. You know, the best I ever got, I think, is I learned some basic GarageBand and I put together a few crummy tracks for myself to like, you know, send to a friend as a demo or to reference for myself. But I would never put that out. It was never something that I felt like proud to show my parents, for example. But I mean, when I came in, that's where I was. I was this wounded animal who was just like, I'm on guard. I know exactly how to not have this guy screw this up. But it really is, it's time, right? So time with someone is like the number one way that like you can learn each other, right? You don't go on a first date and then get engaged if you're sane. But yeah, having that go from like kind of a process where I was very guarded and very protective to, you know, I think it was very natural the way you would offer feedback. As a performer, you know, artists should always be open to feedback. If you're not allowing yourself to grow to the potential that you could realize. I think if you are resistant to feedback, that's going to reflect negatively on your performance and on your reputation. Being able to take notes when a director comes in or a choreographer tells you to do something different, a music director can be very blunt and let you know you need to sing this part this way. And some people reject it, some people have a hard time with it. All of that's understandable, but ultimately, if you want to be able to grow professionally, artistically, however, you need to be able to accept feedback. So when you would give me feedback, luckily, it was always stuff that sounded good, and I happen to agree with. You know, we have a lot of similar tastes. That album came out sounding something a lot better than I expected, and I was very proud of it. I recorded the whole album with like needing vocal surgery, like a month after we were done recording it, and I still was like, wow, I don't hear that at all in these tracks. Like, Mike, you really did a great job.
So after that album, you got the vocal surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was out of the show for about a month, and then I went right back. It's amazing what they can do now with lasers.
That's crazy. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot the timeline. I remember it happened, but I forgot if it was before we started recording or if it was after. Yeah.
No, we recorded the album. I had vocal surgery. I recovered, and then in September we went back to. I said I have more songs, and I want to do a song a month, and I just started booking like 2 sessions a month to get them done.
And so at that point, we were collaborating a lot more. You were coming in not less prepared, but more leaning into the fact that we were going to shape them up together. I think I played bass on most of them, if not all.
You're a lot better bassist than I am, so it was a no-brainer to have you play the bass parts.
But I think at some point you stopped writing bass parts. We're just like, well, we'll figure it out. And as we got into the pop stuff, which lent itself to more electronic arrangements and things like that, you were coming in with chord structures and vocal melodies, and we were just shaping up songs together.
Yeah, the last album I released most recently, it's a 9-song LP, and I'm pretty sure for at least 7 of those songs, I came in and said, I don't know what I want this to sound like, but like maybe you can listen and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's not so much, you know, I'm the band and I'm coming to the producer to put this, you know, put it down on tape for me and push the buttons. I'm, you know, I'm Eminem and you're Dr. Dre and we're making the song together. You know, at that point.
But that's an interesting point about like when working with bands, producers can be a bit more, there's a lot of creative influence when working with a band, but my personal experience, I've always been much more creatively involved when working with solo artists than working with bands, because bands have time to, well, first of all, there's multiple instruments, right? You have someone who's playing guitar, sometimes 2 guitar players, a singer, a bass player, a drummer, and they go and rehearse. You hope they go and rehearse.
Someone is drinking the whole time.
Yeah. And so they will go and write a bunch of songs together. And in doing so, they all write their own parts. So when they come to the studio, there's at least the guitar parts. There's at least the bass part. The drummer knows what he's doing, you hope. But they've fleshed that stuff out. Solo artists don't always do that. There's not always the background in music production to put a full demo together in the style that you want. But if you're a piano player and you want to write pop songs, or you're a guitar player and you want to write pop songs, you can do the chordal instrumentation, the vocal melodies, and then you collaborate with someone who has that pop production background.
You've worked with, big artists. You've worked with like Frank Ocean and Rob Thomas, and you've been an engineer for a major New York studio. But then you made the choice to branch off on your own, start your own business and work with Little Old Me, and other singer-songwriters and artists who are more independent. What made you want to do that, and what was your experience? Like, how did it differ working with folks like me and Daniel Lucier and other local artists versus big names?
For me, at least, like when these things happened in my career, it is important to say. So, like when I worked with Frank Ocean, I was interning at a big studio, and John Legend was actually in that weekend. The two of them they booked the room to write for his upcoming album. So my job as an intern at the studio was to have the piano mic'd in case they had any cool ideas they wanted to not forget. Like, it was not even to really record. It was just like, if they were in the, through the glass and they said, hit record, we would be ready to do so. That's how I met Frank Ocean. He was writing with John Legend. They forgot a hard drive at the studio, and at 10 p.m. I was still there as an intern. Of course, why would I go home? I'm sitting in the studio. So they called me up. They were like, hey, we're going to send a guy over to pick up this drive. And they sent Frank Ocean. And I was just strumming an acoustic guitar in the studio that night, and he liked the chords I was playing. And then we stayed in the studio till 8 in the morning and wrote a song together. So that was my experience working with Frank Ocean. It was right place, right time, got to write a song together. This song is called Fool's Gold. It never really came out. Frank had a bunch of songs leak, unfortunately, and that was one of them. So it's out there on the internet. People play covers of it on YouTube. But it never really officially got released.
Wow.
So cool story, but no one, a lot of people don't believe me when I say that, because the song is out there, but you won't find my name on it because we never actually officially released it. Years later, not interning anymore, but I was actually working for a big studio, and Rob Thomas came to cut vocals for, I forget the name of his album, I'll find it and put it in. My role there was more to be the guy in the room who knows this specific studio in and out. If they want, different microphones, or how to, where the patch bay, how everything navigates, signal-wise around the room, I'm the guy with that knowledge. But my role there was more supportive than really running the show. I wasn't hired by Rob's label to be the sound guy there. And sticking with that route, I mean, different opportunities might have come up for me, but the motive to want to run my own studio was really to be a bit more in control of the types of projects that I work with. And when you work for a studio, the goal of the studio owner is to keep the studio booked. My goals as a producer are to advance my career. Without the ability to choose the artists that I want to work with, or at least a style of music where I feel like this is where I do my best work, I felt a little stuck. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I mean, if you asked me in college, what's your goal? I would have said, I want to be a recording engineer at a studio in New York City, and I'll do that forever. But you reach your goals, and your goals morph and change and develop and grow. And the next thing for me was, how do I become the studio owner? Which is funny because talking about goals of a studio owner versus producer, those are different goals, and I took on those goals when I opened the studio. It's like, okay, I don't care what style of music, I need people in the door. Suddenly those were my problems, But that was really the push to go and do that, was to just have more control over the types of music I was making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you did make that decision to start your own business, what were kind of maybe unforeseen challenges you faced that maybe naively or just out of ignorance, you didn't see going in?
Unforeseen challenges. I had some pre-existing clientele that I was doing freelance sort of on the side while I was working at a studio. I had some freelance clients as well that I knew, like, at least when I first opened the doors, there'd be some income, some business coming in the door. So it was like kind of having to time that the right way. And also at the same time, living at home, I lived at home for a while. Before opening that studio was so that I could buy equipment. I had microphones, I had speakers, I had a studio desk, ready to go. And I didn't buy them in one shot. This was every year I would make a new sort of big studio purchase so that when I opened the doors, there was equipment in the room.
Yeah.
So I had some preparation there, but unforeseen challenges was just how do I get people in the door? I knew that was going to be the thing. It was that's either what makes a business successful or not. Are there any customers? Does anyone want to work with you? And eventually, I kind of took the opposite approach, and instead of letting people find me, I went on Instagram. Living here, we live in Queens, New York, where there's plenty of musicians around. And I just went on Instagram scrolling by location. And if I saw somebody playing guitar or piano and singing, I would shoot them a message and talk to them and tell them about my studio. And a lot of people were like, that's exactly what I need. I've been looking for a studio and couldn't find somebody, and came in and we had a meeting and listened to some of their music. I played them some of the things that I had, those demos I was talking about that I wrote myself. And people started coming. And eventually, again, living here in Astoria, that branched off. People have friends who are also singers and songwriters that were looking for something similar.
Opening the studio, starting your business, were there any choices that you made when you were going through that process that now in retrospect you would have, maybe executed or chosen differently?
Not to say I made all the right decisions.
Nailed it.
But I made a lot of sacrifices that I think if I had not, those would have been the things I would have regretted. The first studio that I rented and turned it's basically a room in the back of a dance studio. It was not ideal for recording. So interesting to choose that as a location for a recording studio. Because they were doing salsa lessons right outside the door, and the doors were not soundproof. They were, doors with inch gaps underneath. But I chose that room because it was a big room and it was affordable. And I had a vocal booth. That was the thing that made it all possible. So any recording had to happen in the booth. If you were doing acoustic guitar recording, we fit a stool in the back of this little 4x4 booth. Otherwise, we would do it, overnight when salsa lessons were done. If not, there would be salsa music on all the recordings. So that was kind of a bit of a sacrifice. It was not the most optimal location, but it kept my initial startup costs low, which made it all possible.
And it's important to show viability in your business at some point. Even though most businesses don't necessarily turn a profit right away, you kind of want to see a path to that. And keeping your costs low early is definitely something. We'll save it for the business podcast. Maybe.
Yeah. No, but really, keeping those costs low was super important to me. Those kinds of sacrifices carried through. Eventually, that studio, we stayed in for about a year, and I hoped to stay there for longer, but we had to move. The rent was getting jacked way up. So I kind of made the next decision to not share the space with other musicians or dance instructors or vocal instructors, which was on the other side of the wall. So it was a very, very loud studio. I wanted a more private space. And so the next building I rented a space in, much more private. You came up to the floor, you walked in my door, and you were just in my studio. Not really any other noise going on. You were not having other people walking around just outside your door. It was a very private space. We just felt like we were in the studio. Not a great building. No. Not a great building at all. Bathroom was questionable. I mean, it was almost like your typical rehearsal space bathroom.
Can we lean into the bathrooms a little bit? Let's discuss the bathrooms because, look, if your goal is to make an album, you don't need to go to the rock star's house and crash on the 8th bedroom and pet their chinchillas and their puppies and their kittens and their pet pigs in the backyard or whatever they got going on. You want to make the album.
Yeah.
That bathroom was a special place.
So it was never stocked. hardly cleaned. So that was another thing I sort of took on to myself. And, you know, every time I was in there cleaning the bathrooms myself, I was like, well, it's affordable.
It was.
And I can pass those savings on to my clients, hopefully. Never stocked. I had a little bathroom caddy by the door. So that, you know, people had soap and all the things they might need. Yeah, another one of those sacrifices. But what we gained in space and privacy, we lost
on the bathroom.
It
gave like college freshman year dorm vibes where like you'd go like with your towel and like your little basket of like toiletries to the shared bathroom space.
It felt like the bathroom backstage if you've played any New York City venue.
Yeah.
At least I like to phrase it that way to make people feel like they were, you know, it was still in music
somewhere
world.
hip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You good? Do you need more coffee?
No, I'm good on coffee. I might still water.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Bubbles or flat?
Whatever you have available. I'll take bubbles
Both available.
If you have bubbles.
Bubbles with no ice, yeah?
Sure. I mean, I'll take a little ice if you have a little ice.
Oh, he wants bubbles with ice now. I told Lauren about those like low calorie, high fiber root beers you guys had me drink. And
Ollipops?
The Ollipops.
Thanks, man.
I'm obsessed now.
Yeah, they're good.
They're very good. I have to save that for February. Where do you want to go next?
Let's talk genres.
Let's talk genres.
So when I first met you, the first EP that we did, I would call that the most singer-songwriter project we did. Then you kind of shift into, we did a whole pop album, and then most recently we did a whole metal album. Very different genres. How did you do that? How did you do that in a way where they all feel authentic? Do you know what I mean? It's not like when I listen to the metal album, I'm not listening to that and saying, that's a pop singer with a side project. And I don't listen to the pop album and go, that's a theater kid trying to do pop music. And I don't listen to the singer-songwriter album and go, this is what he should be doing only. You know what I mean? You cover all three. You do it with authenticity. And I guess like the real question, not so much how did you do that, but was it always a goal of yours? Did you always write in these different genres and have this goal to put out these different styles of music?
I like to listen to all kinds of music, right? When I was in high school, I was in a metal band. You know, we wanted to sound like a cross between Killswitch Engage and Avenged Sevenfold when we were like 16 years old. And then in college, I majored in theater. Came out of college saying, okay, like I'm not going to have a band wherever I go for the rest of my life. So if I want to play, open mics, or I want to gig, or I want to just play guitar, pop music is the way to go. So I wrote a lot of really bad pop music for a very long time, which I think most people should do.
You have to write bad music before you write good music.
Yeah, I came to you with that album after having done rock albums, having done pop albums, singles, here and there, mostly EPs. I came to you with that singer-songwriter content because that was something new that I felt like was now polished and mature. We called that record is called The Sound. And it's because I felt like I found like the sound that was like adult, polished, mature me. Yeah. And one of the songs is like inspired, like it's like a musical theater type of song, even though it's still a singer-songwriter, adult, contemporary sound. It's like I saw a production of Brigadoon and I thought, that's a main character. Why doesn't he have a song? Yeah. And I was like, well, I'll just write him a song then. And then maybe one day they'll put it in the musical. So I did that with you, and I realized, based on the process that we had together and the relationship we had, I felt safe to say, hey, I don't have a band anymore, but if I wrote like I was writing for a band again, I could make the sounds that I used to make. So, we ventured into more pop, which for me was like really fun because I hadn't gone all in like that on that vibe before. Before that, it was always very much there needs to be a guitar in the front of the song. Right. Now suddenly it's like, well, I don't have to have a guitar on the recording.
If you do, it's like some ambient delay in the background.
Yeah, it's a delay, it's a loop, or it's some texture. It doesn't have to be the guy and his guitar in the studio and it's a moment, which a lot of the songs are. And not every song is Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, 1996. We're going to highlight what a vocal talent you are either. Nobody's asking for that now, and unless you really are the best at what you do, you don't need to show people that. So suddenly it became about, okay, I have nothing to prove. I have this incredible creative resource where I feel like I can write and go for whatever I want, and I could trust you to say, hey, we should pull back on this. I think you can really go all in on this element and go for it with the pop music. It was kind of around that point where I said, well, I never stopped playing electric guitar. I just hadn't had a band. Right. So I had all these ideas kind of just sitting around in the Notes app and Guitar Pro and wherever. And I said, let me really put these together and polish them off now that I know what I'm doing. And it's all that free time when I was an actor, having just all day free before I would go to work. I said, I'll set a goal for myself, very, very important, and say X many of hours a week. Working on the music. It doesn't matter what kind at this point. So, some days I'd be doing the metal project, some days I'd be doing a new pop song. And when I started bringing music into you, I started to, I feel like maybe for you could tell me yes or no, but it was like what are we going to do today? I think I would sit down, I'd bring an instrument, and you'd say, what are we working on today, Drew? And I'd say...
Sometimes you would just ask me, are you in a mellow mood or a pop mood?
Yeah, sometimes I'd bring two.
Which, that counts for something, because if your producer is I would have worked on whatever you wanted, but you checking in with me to say, what mood are you in?
Yeah, what's good for you right now?
Sometimes it was a metal mood, and sometimes that's what we made.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, folks, if you can bring who the fuck am I talking to, folks?
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It was, at the end of the day, it's fun, right? Like if you're having fun, write a country song for a friend, write a metal song for your imaginary band, write a pop song for yourself. I wrote a song once for Adele. Adele doesn't know me. I didn't sell it to her, but that's the song I wrote.
That's a great exercise, because when you only write for yourself, you can sometimes put yourself in a hole. So if you need a way to sort of branch out or come up with new ideas, stop writing for yourself. Even if you end up being the person to sing that, think from the point of view of a hired songwriter. You know what I mean? And like you said, you wrote a song for Adele. If you could pitch it to her, that'd be great. But that wasn't the goal, right?
No,
you just wanted to challenge yourself and do something different.
I wouldn't even know where to begin with pitching a song to an artist. I feel like artists have enough when they're successful. You have enough people writing for you. But yeah, as an exercise, I think it's always good to say, okay, what part do I want to play today? Do I want to be the guitarist of this type of band? Do I want to be the singer of this type of act? Any way to help kind of get your creative juices flowing. And then it's like you have to do something that's fun for you, right? Like if I'm writing a song and I'm not having a good time, what am I doing?
Yeah.
The world is not demanding that I write music for them. I'm not Stevie Wonder or Taylor Swift or one of these like prolific artists who the world is like, give us more. Most independent artists, it's like 3-4 years, you're very creative, you're getting your juices flowing, and you're in a schlag of just putting your stuff out there and hoping people would listen. It needs to be fun for you. If it's not, you better have another plan or stop. Don't have fun doing something more lucrative.
That's really true. That's a great point. Would you say that's accurate to say that it's because of these different experiences, be it the music you're working on, the music you're listening to, and then in some ways our collaboration, I think that probably contributed more to what spawned a pop album. Artist and producer relationship really lends itself to pop.
The relationship that we built empowered me as an artist to make bolder decisions. A good producer, does the job of giving you what you want to hear. But a really good producer, I would even say a great producer, makes you say, don't be afraid to go that one step further. You can now take all the stuff that you've done, that's great, now take a risk.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't work, we can throw it away, we can fix it, we can tweak it. And that could be in the form of being a good vocal coach if you're in the booth. That could be in the form of getting to know each other so well that it's like, yeah, I can come in with a guitar and we can be like, great, so there doesn't need to be any guitar on this song, but we're gonna fill it out. So let's just do a scratch.
Yeah, that's how I wrote it, but we can make it whatever we want.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite videos back in the day was of Katy Perry playing The One That Got Away on the guitar. And I'm like, I don't think there's a guitar on this track on the album. And I didn't know that she could play the guitar, but here she is playing it. And I'm like, I wonder if that's how it was written.
I'd like to see that video.
It's wonderful.
I'm sure that is how it's written, to be honest.
I mean,
or at least started from that idea.
Yeah, most people don't start at like the buttons on the,
Producers do.
So yeah, I have not.
Yeah.
I have not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that a really good producer can empower you as an artist to take bigger risks, make bolder decisions, because you know that if you fail, you're not just going to sit there with egg on your face, releasing the album on iTunes and all your friends going, you need to really take up the high mids.
Sometimes they will. Sometimes your friends will tell you how you should have mixed the song, and that's really fun. Artists love when you do that.
Yeah, just get me all the raw files, man. I know Pro Tools. I can do this.
You think your producer will just send me the stems, bro? I love that. You had mentioned that you and I were not, Katy Perry or Adele or whoever, that the world is not waiting for our music yet.
I like that.
And that's true. It's not to say that those aren't goals, right? Like as a songwriter or an artist, shoot for the stars. But what I want to talk about is music promotion and the disconnect between how commercial artists and big labels will promote an artist and how that doesn't really apply to smaller artists. Would you agree?
I would.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What I've seen a lot of artists do is promote something that's not out right now. I think every impression is an opportunity, and I've seen a lot of artists promote their album, promote their thing, make Instagram posts, make TikToks, or save the dates. My whole album is dropping a month from now. Someone new sees that, might look cool, and they might click like, but a month from now when that album drops, you've lost that person. The new Drake album, they're gonna check, is Jay-Z dropping an album at the same time? They're making sure these things are not coinciding because there's people waiting for that music. And they can promote, they can drop a single and say 8 more songs are coming out in the new year. And people are waiting for it. But for new artists, if someone sees a social media post and it is not, this song is available and playing in the background right now for you to love, it's a missed opportunity. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, we talked about that when I actually put out the metal record because, we've had a lot of discussions, we've done, 7 songs, 2 more, we're gonna be done with the album. Should I release an album? Should I release a single? And, well, 2 things. One, having music already released before you then tell people about it so they can actually go and take action. There's a call to action, listen to the song, it's out right now, versus, there's gonna be a song soon and you're like, good for you, I don't even know who you are. That's important because it gives people a hook into whether or not this is something that they ever want to return to and follow for sure. That's asking a lot for people's attention to follow something that you're doing. But also, in today's economy where it's all about right now and then next. People a lot of the times now don't really listen to whole albums all the way through. They don't even know what album songs might have been on.
Right.
So being able to release singles. When I was in that period where I was doing a new single every single month, I think that's probably, and I'm not an expert on promotion, obviously this feels almost like an intervention right now, but that was the most traction I got because suddenly there was a consistency to it. There was stuff already out. People could listen to that and say, oh, he writes, stuff that I jive with. I want to listen to this. And then a new one would come out and it was there.
This was when you were doing a song a month?
A month, yeah. And so suddenly it's, a new single this month. And then, well, he's doing another one next. Wow. It was something that not only could people hook, key into and listen to and find something for themselves, but it was also a more persistent reminder of here's something, and now here's something else. And you know, in this age of distribution where you can, you know, do single after single after single instead of, you know, paying for a whole album up front and then it goes to all this, you know, Tower Records and Sam Goody. I just dated myself. It's just different.
Yeah.
And being able to constantly put something out there, stay relevant, you know, reaching out to people again. Hey, here's another one. Here's something else, and here's something new, and it's available now. Not, you know, check me out in 3 weeks.
Right.
Unless you're somebody who has people waiting for your, you know, the Lemonade video or something. People aren't going to be like, oh, he seems like a nice guy. You have to give value before you can ask for anything in return.
Yeah.
What can you deliver for consumers, for listeners, for viewers that they're not already getting, or that they want more of?
Yeah.
They won't know to ask for it until they're getting it.
Can you tell us a bit about the process of finding a studio? As somebody who ran a studio, I thought that would be the easiest part, right? Like I thought if my studio is accessible, it's on the internet, people are looking for this all the time. They'll find it, they'll Google it or whatever it is. And when I actually took the initiative to find people, the response I got a lot of the times were, oh my God, that's exactly what I've been looking for. It's been so hard to find the right producer. It's been so hard to find a studio. And I think in some ways, people are looking too big. This is not to say don't go to your major recording studios. Don't fly to Manhattan and you know, record 12 songs at the power station, or I don't know if that's still open. I think that is intimidating a lot of times. People think I need to record 12 songs and it's going to cost me $1,200 a day. And that prevents people from making music, when that's not necessarily the only route. But I think that prevents people from getting started a lot of times.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and this is not just music, this is true for anything, is like if you want to block yourself from doing something, make it look really hard, right?
Yeah.
So like in you know, in computer programming, they say if you have a big problem and you're struggling with solving it, solve a smaller problem first, right? So if the problem is, you know, the goal is I want to record, you know, 9, 10, 12 songs, and you know, it's going to cost me all this money and it's going to take all this time and I haven't written a lick of it yet. That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot of work. It is. But if you break it down to, okay, you know, most people set New Year's, you know, goals. I want to write an album. I want to find a good producer. If you solve the smaller problem first of what am I going to do today? You know, what's something I can do right now that's very easy that I already know how to do?
Yeah.
So, you know, I know how to Google search studios near me. I can record one song. It's like, you know, it's very common for people to switch therapists. It's like, you know, you can go to a studio, do 1 or 3 songs with a producer and say, that was great, but I'm looking for something a little bit more. It's not going to hurt your producer's feelings if you don't work with them for the rest of their lives.
Yes, it will.
Anytime you can break a big goal into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, solving problems you already know how to solve will allow you to take those tiny steps to get to the top of the Empire State Building, metaphorically speaking.
Take small steps, solve small problems, record one song, and take it from there.
Man, I could talk about this for hours, so I should probably stop. It's true. It's like if you say I've written one song, I'm going to go find somebody, that sounds much more manageable than I'm going to fly to New York, I'm going to find the best studio, I'm going to pay the most money and make it sound incredible. It's like, hey, if you haven't released a lot of music, why don't you just put something out there? See if anyone thinks it's any good.
Yep.
Or if you even like it, or even enjoy the process.
Yeah.
But like, you just get started on something simple. That's really the whole thing. Just start.
Just start.
Just start.
And with that, I think that we should end.
Yeah.
Because we started a long time ago. This has been super fun. Drew, thanks for having me in your home, or set up here in your living room where you let me bring a bunch of lights and cameras. I'm going to do more of these. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, consider subscribing for more musical conversations, music production tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.